Welcome to AgriUT Conversations podcast. Welcome to AgriUT Conversations podcast, a space where inspirational leaders meet to discuss challenges and solutions our planet and its people face today. We intend to capture these conversations to increase awareness, encourage engagement, and inspire others to follow in the steps of these leaders striving to make the world a better place. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Angela Clark. Angela's career spanned many industries, customer segments, and services across digital education, media, payments, financial services, and Web3. Angela has led companies as a CEO and managing director, founded her own startups, and led transformation of divisions and customer strategy within larger companies. I'm very excited to have Angela on today. She's also the co-founder of Wallet Nation, which we'll hear about shortly. Hi, Angela. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good. You're calling in from Sydney, Australia, right?
I am. I'm calling in from my underground bunker it's not sort of Survivor type underground bunker, but my room under my house.
Amazing. Well, great to have you on today. So let's get started with a bit about your background. I did introduce you. It's a snippet I got from your LinkedIn.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds very serious. I realize that must sound very serious on LinkedIn. Yeah.
It's always good to start with the serious. And now let's hear about the real narrative of Angela Clark.
Yeah, I think maybe the quickest way to summarize it, I spent maybe the first, was originally an investment analyst and sort of VC, but I probably spent sort of 15 to 20 years in media, running sort of outdoor companies and running radio networks, and then sort of digital innovation for the ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which for anyone who's overseas is sort of like the same as the BBC. And I guess though, by getting into media is one of the first industries that were disrupted. So I was media is what sort of sparked my interest in sort of morphing over into more like into technology and into distribution, sort of understanding platform strategy and distribution strategies for media, because obviously we're being disrupted by big tech. And I think, that sort of led me from media into more digital and sort of product sort of roles. And then a sort of a foray into financial services, which was sort of around an interest in small business making their sort of financial or inclusion services better. The small guys obviously don't necessarily get the same degree of, I don't think you wouldn't call it non-financial inclusion. It's not that they excluded, but in some ways they are, because they are kind of excluded from some sort of, it's harder for them to get credit and lending, and then also into sort of P2P payments, and then subsequently now into solving kind of non-custodial problems in crypto, so that tokens as a medium of exchange or as a store of value can be safely used in a non-custodial way.
Wow. I can see how that journey has led to Wallet Nation and crypto, because it's, the latest emerging technology. How interesting.
Well, I think the only thing is maybe every time I've done, every job I've done is the first time I've done that job. I don't know what that says, whether I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I like doing new things.
Oh, yeah. Emerging technologies, especially in the financial inclusion space. It's, we're going to get to that. We're going to be talking about crypto for good and the financial inclusion stuff. Before we do that, let us know a little bit more about Wallet Nation. What exactly does Wallet Nation do?
Well, Wallet Nation stemmed from, my co-founder is a guy called Rick Richardson, who's quite a well-known Aussie inventor, particularly around sort of security software. He's the inventor of software activation. And he, many years ago, when he'd first read Satoshi's white paper, had thought this is really revolutionary, very inspired by what could be unlocked in terms of value for the world out of that kind of blockchain and a token which doesn't require middlemen to transmit or to exchange, etc. But then in the years sort of subsequently sort of wondered why more centralization had occurred, like we can sort of see now with FTX, the centralization with, say, digital currency exchanges or other kinds of middlemen sort of dealt with some of the issues in some ways around the trustlessness that blockchain enables. So you can, exchange safely with trustless parties, but there can be counterparty risk with that. So Rick was really just looking at what could he do to technically solve some of the problems that were inhibiting real world value for crypto and blockchain. And Wallet Nation has arisen out of that, and him and I have partnered to solve the problem of security and protection for direct P2P non-custodial payments and transactions. So you can have a protected transfer without a middleman and still have a recourse mechanism. So Wallet Nation provides that. So if you lose your keys, or if you want to transfer safely to someone before you receive a good or service, you can do it in a way that's reversible. And so that's what Wallet Nation does.
Wow.
As a service. Yep.
Wow. And especially in the recent turbulence that's happened in the crypto space, security is what anyone engaging in this space is looking for. So that's a really important role to play to make people understand that not all platforms are thought with the issues that, we've seen with FTX and some of the other fall downs recently.
Yeah, well, people are sort of, I guess, using closed ecosystems or platforms or to exchange with each other in a way that they consider to be more safe. But ideally, we really want, as you can see with FTX, we want the non-custodial is actually safer, but we need some protection mechanisms in it to be able to reverse payments and to get sort of protection if something does go wrong. Because theoretically, you should be able to transact with anybody across the world safely. It's like in the AgriUT or AgriUT, a small farmer should theoretically be able to transact with anybody in the world. But you might be able to trust the guy at the local market, so if you're physically exchanging the goods with them. But can you trust somebody if you are sending goods and you're waiting for payment? So we're trying to deal with that situation. So there's a way that effectively we encrypt the wallet rather than encrypting or securing the coin, so that kind of liberation can happen across borders or across people you don't know.
And that leads into a perfect focus on the crypto for good use cases. I think there's a changing narrative. When people hear crypto, they usually think Bitcoin, Ethereum, and everything that's happened with the FTX saga now. But crypto and blockchain and Web3 are three distinct areas, and it's really interesting to hear what's happening in that space. And I'd love to hear a little bit more around your perspective of where it's moving and why the crypto for good space is something to look out for in the future.
Well, maybe I'll say two things up front. One is I've always sort of felt, even when I was more of a Web 2, doing lots of digital platform strategy kind of work. I don't think technology is good or bad. Like, I think technology it can be either. Like, it's not doesn't have its own ethics. But we bring to that, it's humans are good or bad, or maybe not humans are good or bad, but we can do good or bad things with technology, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my sort of first, I guess, framing. My second framing, I guess, is even before my career background, I studied sort of development economics and politics and economics of sort of the developing world. And I think, not just in the developing world, but we've seen in lots of countries more sort of inequality arising, and technology and Web 2 has led to more concentrations of power and wealth and data and information. It's been liberating in lots of ways. Like, lots of people have a lot of access to information from Web 2 that they didn't have before. So, access in terms of access to video, to news, all sorts of things have actually been positive around the sort of internet. However, the sort of centralization of data and wealth, has sort of got worse. That's not good. That's not good for the world. And also, as we have a deteriorating in environment, like the urgency to fix some of that sort of flaws, I don't think you can really fix at scale. Increasing centralization and monopolistic or oligopolistic type industry is not going to solve, to my way of thinking, all the sort of world's problems. But I think there's fundamentally in blockchain. That's why I think a lot of people like myself have a lot of hope around it, like that it can have more potential to redistribute value back to the people who create the value, who are currently at the moment missing out on the true value of their effort because there's sort of imperfect systems and the middlemen have to provide all these services in the middle, whether that's for trust, whether that's for supply chain logistics, whether that's just all these different market failures. That the middlemen undoubtedly provide value, but it's at high cost, and it's because there's a sort of structural issue there that people don't have other options. So I have a lot of hope in, if you don't need middlemen and you can transact or exchange value across borders or within your country, or be rewarded directly, like in your AgriUT token. I can directly reward a coffee farmer. I feel good that the person who made that coffee bean's actually getting something direct from me. All of those things are possible, so that's exciting. I've also been sort of philosophically, and as has my founder Rick, less interested in speculative uses of crypto. I don't know whether that's because I don't understand them as much, or whether, to me, I'm always really interested in technology solving real world problems. So obviously, poverty is a real world problem that has consequence not just for the people who are poor, but for the world globally, in terms of conflict and environmental degradation, etc. But also, redistribution of value, just even where people are paying too much in middleman fees, which is the case in financial services and in payments, etc. We could return a lot of money back to small businesses as well. So that's a long way of sort of saying that blockchain technology is really, I think, really liberating, a lot of potential. Tokens, I think, I wouldn't profess to be the world's biggest experts in tokens, but tokens can be all sorts of different things. Like they can be a loyalty token, they can be a utility token, give you a right or an access. They can be linked for, an NFT. Can be linked to a bottle of wine, for example, that can be stored centrally, or gold, or etc. So it can be linked to a real world asset. It can be a digital asset of itself. And then, but I think you and I have spoken briefly before about, like, crypto is just a very big word that encompasses lots of things. And I think when people think crypto, they just think speculative coins. And I'm not saying that there's not a value in that. And I think, but I think a lot of us in the sector, or the people who are interested in what the technology can do, are more interested in how do we use the technology to solve real world problems. And that kind of a long way of saying, well, crypto for good. If you're a person trying to solve a problem that would help people, then there's lots of really great applications for tokens and blockchains. And I think what AgriUT and AgriUT are doing is a great example of that.
It all comes down to utility, right? What is this technology being used for? What problem is it trying to address in the community or in the supply chain? Because then it has real world value. And I love what, technology is solving real world problems. That's ultimately the goal of anything like this. And a loyalty program, it's interesting, loyalty programs, there's many of them around, right? Many of us engage in different types of them. But having one that enables you to send something of value to a farmer in the middle of a remote rural region. Yesterday I was out in Papuan in Bali and, drove 3 hours. My colleagues in a car were there were like 5 hours, really in the middle of nowhere. Being able to say thank you for producing coffee and doing the work you do, that's really something huge in the community. It was just, the event yesterday was all about, giving hope and congratulating the community for all that they've been doing over the years to try and improve the harvest of their coffee, to try and look at ways to increase the price and get more wealth into the community. So loyalty programs that are connected to that's what excites me, in terms of
that's right,
that real world value.
And it's like, theoretically, like, you can have a loyalty program like that, without blockchain and a token.
You can.
But it's a good example, I think, where, like, when you your blockchain strategy stuff, where the traceability, so the immutability of the ledger, and where there's a level of trustlessness to solve, which is, if I did thought I was donating, whether it's like some aid programs or whatever, directly to a person, do I actually trust that organization is actually doing that, or is it just going into a bucket, etc.? So solving those, I think that's where blockchain is different technology to other things, and can resolve really, really elegantly trustless problems. So I don't probably really trust that if I bought a cup of coffee at my local cafe, that the coffee farmer in Kenya is really going to get a reward. But if I know it's on blockchain and it's traceable, then I have a much higher degree of belief that it's actually directly being linked, because I know that they can actually trace that coffee bean to that cafe, and that they could actually reward the actual person, which is, similar, definitely. Not just similar in terms of art, some applications in blockchain around art traceability, or all sorts of other kinds of things that can go back to originators, whether that's primary producers or creators. I think that, it's really exciting, a lot of that stuff. And maybe that's one of the good things about FTX, that maybe speculative is, to me, speculative trading of crypto is very like traditional financial services. It's about making money, as much, from margin and trading, etc. I think some of these other things are a lot sexier problems. Maybe they're not immediately as profitable, but I think they'll have a lot more profound sort of social and societal impact. And, the other thing I often, I don't know whether it's a truism, but, someone a lot smarter than me was sort of saying, also, in addition to it being technology not being good or bad, I don't think it really changes human behavior. Fundamentally, humans are probably not that different, like, are kind of things that we're interested in. And people are interested in not just connecting in their own communities, but connecting across boundaries. So I think there is some things in blockchain that sort of liberates us to do some of the things that we would like to do, which is to have direct connections and to be able to establish trust. Because if you have enough trustless transactions, it's a bit like, when you record transactions with someone, if you feel like you can build confidence with someone or with an organization across boundaries, languages, etc., directly, without there having to be middlemen or multiple middlemen in the middle, you will actually then not necessarily need that to be a trustless transaction. You might then develop a trust transaction, which might use blockchain, or might actually just merge back into the another sort of real world or existing system. So all these things I think are quite can potentially be quite profound. But it is a bit of a conundrum that it's the sort of seems to be the first wave, like Web3, where people are being asked to understand the technology. And I have sort of oscillated with it, saying I don't really know that people need to know how a technology works to understand the benefits. But I'm starting to go back the other way and thinking maybe they do, because otherwise they end up just with an image of what's possible in this world, in the Web3 world, which is just dominated by the high-profile sort of coins and the trading. And maybe people do need to understand a bit about how blockchain works to understand why so much why there's so much potential in it for addressing sort of inequality and opening up access, because otherwise I think people like ourselves are all seen as quite sort of naive, that we're kind of selling speculative coins on the idea that it's financial liberation, but we're not really selling speculative coins to solve the problem of inequality and the unbanked, etc. We're thinking that blockchain as a technology enables people to solve the problems themselves more, because you don't need the middlemen. If you don't need the middlemen, then people can use that technology in the way that works for them. So maybe we do actually probably need to have a bit of a blockchain 101 understanding for people. Otherwise, people are just always going to think it's Sam Bankman-Fried and
exactly
speculative margin trading sort of stuff.
Yeah, a little bit of education around the whole ecosystem, so that we can, like you said, the high profile coins and stories, that usually what dominates the narrative in people's mind when they think about these things. So there needs to be more showcases of it. And I know you actually met with some of the AgriUT and AgriUT team at the Australian Crypto Convention recently, and they were talking about a use case there in terms of, supporting marine research and sea life. And I think there was lots of other solutions over there that are showing examples. So it's coming. It's definitely growing, like the utility of the technology in ways that can actually deliver real impact into various communities and with different use cases is growing. So that's the exciting part. Now we just need to get it more into the mainstream and educate more people and have more sessions with yourself so that you can share your wisdom, because you've said some really interesting points in the description you just gave before.
Well, I think that's at the crypto convention in the Gold Coast. What was quite interesting is that I think a lot of people liked seeing the crypto for good sort of examples, like real world applications, because I think that gives them a lot of. It's not hope, because it sounds slightly naive. It's what they thought should happen, so it's good to see it start happening. I mean, I was quite interested in the marine, owning a marine animal, NFT idea, in the sense of, like, when I was at the ABC, there's quite a lot of communities around the world. I mean, Wikipedia is a public example, but a lot of archive projects as well. There's surprisingly amounts of people who contribute their time free to lots of communal information stores. I've been quite interested in community information as well. But I could see it from that fish one, which is people who are passionate about a certain area, and making a sort of a non-fungible token where you kind of have I'm accountable for whether it's, keeping up to date on or collating the medieval history of, I don't know, some sort of
whatever your interest
church
is in
and whatever
life.
your thing is that you're interested in, or whatever it is, that kind of sense of ownership, which we know from sort of gamification type sort of theory is motivating for people. And it doesn't have to be status of wealth or materialism. It can just be that, I did this, and whether you trade that or share that or whatever. I think there's some really interesting. I was really interested in that application, and I thought that was great to see how that unfolds, and another great example of trying to show people, a non-fungible token doesn't have to be a Bored Ape. It can be just you're kind of giving someone something, but you're actually not giving them anything. You're actually asking them to be part of your community and to care about something that you care about. So, everyone in crypto is sort of a crypto bro and Lamborghinis. I think that's an image also people we need to change. I think lots of people don't think that, but it is unfortunate that that's an association. And
it's changing.
So maybe the downfall of a crypto bro is a good thing. So.
Yeah, look, I think it's changing, and that's definitely my perspective, is that it's been a bit of a upheaval in the crypto world and blockchain and Web3 world in the last couple of years, but it's changing the dynamic and composition of the industry and allowing these use cases to actually come to light, because face it, the people that are still around are the people who are yet to actually build and see a future with these new technologies. Not just the financial industry that got involved and turned it into investment vehicle and had some very bad decisions along the way. But yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Well, wow, I feel like we've unpacked so much, and I feel like I continue having conversations around lots of different things. But maybe
hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll have lots more conversations. I think two women talking in crypto, that's a good thing. Or blockchain, maybe not talking crypto, but whatever we're talking.
Web3. Web3, blockchain, crypto, I guess they all come into their own, the new digital technologies. But yes, it's definitely encouraging to see more women speaking in this space. So we'll continue. But one last question before we wrap up.
Go for it.
The Australian perspective. So, Australia is its own beautiful country, and there's a lot of perspectives in different countries that are a bit more favorable to crypto, I think, and the use of it. So I'm really interested to hear your perspective on the Australian perspective as you see it. In crypto for good and these utility cases, like, is it happening in the community? Are people actually starting to speak about it, or is it still just this online hype that the news kind of plays down?
Yeah, I think that my perspective, which I'm still relatively new to the sort of the crypto world. Which when I say relatively new, X number of 3 plus sort of years, or which is very new in crypto terms, but not as new as some. But I do think that my observation would be that the ecosystem here is quite strong in Australia, but that was more around, Immutable's a very big company, a very successful tech, Web3 company, and there's quite a few, Australian companies in that space are quite held in quite high regard. I would say, however, they're kind of in that sort of crypto community sort of space. I think in the general space, because Australia's kind of relatively well served in a banking sense, a fairly wealthy country. The Australians who've got into buying crypto have done mainly for a sort of trading or speculative purposes, that the sort of public perception of crypto is really around cryptocurrency, the trading of coins. And I think that what has happened over the last sort of year or so, people just literally, their views about crypto are really about what happens to the price of crypto. So crypto's gone down, therefore crypto is not very good, which is to me a bizarre, analysis of it. I think you have to think there's a lot of people, or the way I think, there's a lot of people who are middlemen who don't want crypto to succeed. I think they strategically know what it can evolve into. And it's, very liberating, and a lot of value can come back. We have very concentrated industries here. So anything that can work P2P, I think could be really, positive in Australia. I think some people do understand that. But I mean, the amount of people who've said to me, I just don't understand crypto, when I encounter them is a lot of people. And so there's not so much, I don't encounter so much focus or understanding of the potential of crypto for good. I think, though, when you start talking about supply chain tracking, it is easier for people to understand, and I think they can immediately see a value in that, because it's something Australians care about. They care about all of those things have been something that younger generations all want to do more directly, be directly involved in those kinds of decisions, to know where their things have come from. So if you kind of explain blockchain can enable that, then they start sort of seeing the difference, I think, between blockchain as a technology and crypto. I think people kind of know that it's more than these speculative coins, but they're not quite sure
how it works,
exactly what it is, and what it's really going to do. Even financial services people talk about the blockchain as something that they will use. It's different, but it's not clear to people exactly how. So that's not a very clear answer, but
no, I think that just represents the industry, right? There's a lot of unclear answers and spaces to explore, and a lot more education that's required, and actual real life use cases out in the world.
There's a lot of education and real life use cases required. So I mean, naysayers are having a field day at the moment. They're having a great end of the year with. Oh,
they really are.
I did like yesterday. I don't know. I was on. I'm not a massive crypto Twitter person, but I used to do when many years ago, because I've been in media and social media for many years. I used to have like a lot of Twitter accounts, and then I just went cold turkey, didn't have any. So I'm just slowly getting back into Twitter. But was it yesterday in the Senate hearings in the US Congress that they were saying that FTX was run on QuickBooks? I thought, oh my God, like this is just gold, some of this stuff. Like
gold. Really, really gold.
great platform, QuickBooks, but like, my God, you got a financial an exchange run on QuickBooks. It's like, oh, this is it's too good a media story. It's my media background going, this is the naysayers are having a field day. But
they really
that one
are.
seems like outright fraud. But
and like the error of a human, like it just comes to bad governance of an entity that was very large and had a lot of people trust in it, and bad governance and maybe some not so good intentioned governance as well has led to this disaster. But I think the most important thing is that people realize it's not representative of the industry, and that
I think actually bizarrely, I think people do actually understand that, I think, but we'll see.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it's going to be really interesting to have a conversation in 1 year's time and see what happens in the next 12 months in the industry.
Yeah, a year's a long time in crypto, so it'll be lots of different things.
A really long time. It moves so fast, so it'll be interesting. Well, thank you so much. It's been such an interesting conversation, and I think we could delve into so many different areas more. So I look forward to discussing about future topics to talk about. Thank you for your time today. And
thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Angela.
Bye.
Bye.